MTA board meeting is officially calls this meeting to order. And for those speaking in the microphone, please make certain you push the button with that turns on green so you are recorded. And I think that helps us with all of our technology. So thank you very much for doing that. In the meantime, I'm going to do a roll call. And Janet Miller.
Present.
Jessica Doppin.
Present.
Catherine Hayes Sasser.
Present.
Aaron Thompson.
Present.
And Gail Carr Williams is present. If I can have a motion for approval of the February 22nd meeting, board minutes.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. And is there any discussion, any additions or deletions? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We have minutes. Next, we have public comments, and I do have several public comments here, and I will just remind those giving public comments that we have a 2-minute limit, and we'll let you know a sound will go off when the 2 minutes is up. So I'm going to start with Roger Womack. If you can just hold on one sec, Mr. Womack, somebody's bringing a microphone for you so we can hear you. Okay. Thank you.
Providers that we've heard some concerns. Maybe one of the providers may not have got the proper, or may not have got proper consideration, and that being Mobility Solutions. We hope that he and Mohammed and Mobility Solutions will continue. They've done excellent service for the last 6 years. They're designed to serve the disability community. They also work well with people that are blind, people in wheelchairs. For other groups that we've had many concerns, like Music City and others that have issues we've had over and over. And we know that as far as the community, we're watching to see what the board will do and what the considerations will do. And we know that we haven't had a presence here at the board, but we plan from now on to have a representative at the board, even if we're not a member of, have a seat at the board, we will have a voice at the board. And we do hope that y'all will consider Mobility Solutions and continue to use them. We know that y'all don't know, or we don't know who the selected people are, but we do appreciate the overall service we've got from him, and that he has went over and above for the disability community. I thank you for your time.
I thank you very much. Next, I have James Oliver. And here comes the mic for you, Mr. Oliver.
Thank you. I'm not sure I can say what I need to say in 2 minutes. My situation is experiencing bad service on Vita for 2 years, and it goes all the way up. Everything I get back for very, very poor treatment that I have received since losing my leg is I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't need your apology when I got to go to an appointment and I'm being told by a bus driver, I'm not putting the ramp down. I can't, I'm not going through all that. I am tired of calling Tanisha Durham and having her say one thing, and the good bus drivers saying, oh, that's a lie. That's a lie. 88 people are supposed to be helped. if they need assistance getting on the bus, they're supposed to be assisted. I'm tired of bus drivers who think these buses are their personal vehicles, and I'm just gonna let you know, when 12th Avenue South, that's where I live at, was under construction, a bus driver was gonna let me off in a dangerous area. And I asked, can you move the bus up a little bit so I can get off stage? No, that's where the designated bus line is. That's where I'm letting you off at. Hey, other bus drivers do it. I'm not a bus driver. So look it up. This was a 15-minute interaction, and I had called supervisor, and a phone call was waiting for the supervisor came out and addressed the issue. I don't know what happened. He continued to drop the bus and continued to harass me. He would not. While that street was under construction workers would help me before a bus driver helped me. He would tell another passenger, go tell that guy to come out in the street in traffic and come down here to me. I'm not going to stay here. I have been intimidated by the bus drivers. I've been intimidated by the bus drivers. I stopped riding Vigo for 5 months because I was scared. I should not have to be at a bus stop looking to see who the driver is. I might not be able to take this. I should be told, oh, the ramp doesn't work. You know the ramp works all the time, don't you?
Mr. Oliver, you've exceeded your time, but I'm going to give you 30 more seconds to finish your sentences, okay?
I'm just going to say, you know, the ramp on the buses work all the time. If it doesn't work electronically, they work manually. Oh, the ramp ain't working. A bus driver, the next bus driver, yeah, the ramp works all the time. If it doesn't work manually, they can get out and come down. And I didn't film it, and I didn't think about it at the time when I saw a bus driver doing it. But yeah, don't get me wrong, you have a lot of good bus drivers, but you let
Thank you very much. Dawn Craig, did I pronounce that correctly?
Other people who cannot speak to themselves. I've been in the bus for 22 years. I used to drive Georgia, and I think was for hours without being showing up. Luckily, I had the ability to call them in, they were the carrier, and other people don't get that ability. I didn't think the physical service you have, there must be a better way to organize a schedule. And you don't put people out in the cold out in the office for 4 hours, unless people home after they get out for 4 hours waiting for the bus, then they get home, they have queues for exhaustion for waiting. It is not acceptable. It is not humane. We should love what other people have. We're going to pay for the service. We're going to give people a break. Nobody's perfect. But something needs to be done. Either call people after they get home and see if they got home okay, or reconstruct the boundary lines. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Those are the only 3 public comments that I have. If anyone else wishes to make a public comment that has not filled out a form, is there anyone else in the room wishing to make a public comment? Hearing none, I will close the public comment section of our agenda. Thank you very much. If we have 3 information-only items, I'll ask the board members, would any of you like any of those pulled out to discuss individually, or do you have any questions or comments about those before we accept them as information only? Hearing no requests, I would just urge you all to read them, and if you do have questions, please reach out to the staff member that has signed the information. And we do not have anything on the consent agenda items. So no consent agendas. So I'm going to change the agenda around a little bit, if you don't mind, Janet and Jessica, and I'm going to do new initiatives before we do Operations and Finance Committee. So I'm going to turn this over to you, Ms. Miller, for new initiatives and community engagement.
Thank you. You're going to keep me on my toes today. That's great.
Yes, you know, I think we gotta just do that. Right?
Okay, so we have 3 agenda items for the new initiatives and community engagement committee. 1 is informational and 2 are action items. And the first is a final action plan on the Connect Downtown study that we've all talked a lot about over the last year. And Felix Castrodad is going to give us that update on the final action plan. Welcome, Felix.
Thank you.
And
Good
Marty.
afternoon. So I have Marty Sewell here with me, who is the project manager for the Connect Downtown project. And as a reminder, this is a partnership between NDOT, Nashville Department of Transportation, WIGO, the State Department of Transportation, and Downtown Partnership. And I know you've been all waiting for some recommendations from the plan, and we are finally there. So Marty is going to take us through the recommendations of the plan. We included executive summary in your printouts, and I think Monica has some additional copies of the executive summary as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Marty to take you through the recommendations of the action plan.
Right. Thanks, Felix, and thank you to the board for another opportunity to speak with you about Connect Downtown. As Felix said, we're at the end, and we're ready to move past the planning part and start getting to the implementation part. And I know you all are as well. So I want to spend a few minutes today. It looks like, are we up yet? Or is it next? Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm not used to having such organized presentations built in with that. So I appreciate that. It's usually a harder process at other boards, but thank you. All right. So I'll get back to what I was saying. As Felix mentioned, our 10-year action plan to keep downtown moving. Last 2 years of work, working with stakeholders in the community. And as Felix mentioned, of course, our sponsors, the partnership that was so important to making this happen, as well as all of the other agencies and boards throughout the city and region that were instrumental as well.
Excuse me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I apologize. That was it?
Sir, yes.
We treat you like crap, and we heard you for 2 minutes, and now we're conducting business? You
That-
brought me out here for this?
That is how,
That's exactly, go ahead and say it. Yeah, that's what we're doing.
okay. Pardon me?
Well, screw you too.
Okay.
How dare you treat people that have to pay money and have to.
It's okay.
Drive your stinking butt to be treated like crap. Here's one right here. You see the,
Sir,
telephone pole in the middle of the sidewalk, bus driver couldn't stop them, and the bus stop is right there. How dare you? How dare you? Crap, man.
All right. We'll keep going if that's okay. All right. I know that the community's voices are important to hear, and
Community
they're not always
voices are-
easy to hear.
they are very important here, and I know you had to have a lot of community voices, and I appreciate community voices. I truly do, because it makes us better.
Yeah.
And it's certainly going to make this better, and we'll walk through this one as we do. But I do appreciate community voices. They matter.
So as I go through the recommendations, I'm going to try to spend a little bit more or put more emphasis on the near-term actions that we're going to be ready to get going. You'll see slides that we've already shown, and of course, things that are in the executive summary as well will be pretty familiar to you. But I do want to focus on what we can get done in that get started on, at least in that first 3 years. I'm showing you the goals again. I think you're all familiar with those by this point, but that is how we organized how we would respond to the issues and concerns that were identified. Organized the recommendations by 5 big moves, and let me make sure I wasn't supposed to say something else. Oh yes, and we organized by the 5 big moves, and last fall we went to the community one more time, taking the 5 big moves out, getting more input, learning more about some of the very minute details, and we've made a few edits since then that were responsive to very specific needs that individual property owners had. And so we feel like we have, to the point that we can, addressed everything and we're ready to advance. So everyone's not going to be happy. No one ever is always happy with the planning process. It is a meet in the middle sometimes process. And so we've had that sort of part of our feature to our process as well. But as we went through the last round here, and these are the changes that we looked at coming into this last phase were primarily, as you see on the screen there, addressing the adjustments to some of the one-way conversions that we had proposed that had interfered with a couple of the get the word right, the garage exits and accesses. That makes a difference which way you're going to go out of those. And so we had to spend a good bit of time getting used to that and understanding those impacts and making changes. Adding 8th Avenue South as the future corridor for frequent transit corridor, number 8. And then also just the flexible curb recommendations, giving some more meat in that. And also on the transportation demand management side that I'll spend a few minutes on in a second, a more robust program to address our congestion that way. Big moves on the managing congestion. You'll recall the transit, or excuse me, my boss would get mad at me, the mobility centers, although I'm sorry, I said it right. That's the wrong slide. If she's watching, sorry, Diana. But the traffic management center. I'll probably say mobility centers wrong, and Steve, you can help me get that right in a minute. But,
You're doing great, Mark. You're doing amazing, and we know what you're talking about. You're doing great. Thank you.
So again, the traffic management center that we're working on now, working to implement in the next year or so, or I think it's actually sooner than that, but the adaptive signal technology that we need in downtown, along with other curb-related enforcement, camera enforcement, some things like that would be very specific to the loading and zones that I'll talk about later. But and the TDM program, of course, as well. We want to spend more time developing this program that we have, the Nashville Connector program that you all have been instrumental in helping us set up over the years. And we want to focus on addressing the very Nashville-specific demand management needs, the late night downtown and things of that nature, addressing musician needs and things like that we believe our program can be unique in the country to address, and there are a lot of opportunities there. So we're looking forward to being able to do that. The big move for safety, the intent there, of course, is this is across the board. All of our improvements that involve infrastructure would have a Vision Zero lens, and we would look to incorporate as many countermeasures or safety countermeasures into our designs as possible to make them as safe as we can. And also having some educational programming that will come out of our Vision Zero program in the very near future as well. And moving more people, of course, this is the transit arm of it. Mobility centers that were proposed in line with In Motion, as well as the Better Bus Plan for the Sobro Mobility Center. We would start design on that according to our recommendations here in the first 3 years of the process or the implementation period. The transit priority corridors are the dedicated lanes for buses, that network that you see in the lighter gray but thicker line that makes the loop. We would look to start the design on West Side and James Robertson Parkway in the first 3 years as well. We wouldn't see those delivered at that time, but we would at least be able to get rolling on the design. And so you would certainly hear more about that as that opportunity moves closer. And we would also be looking in the near term for other priority features that could be implemented on 3rd and 4th Avenues, that this would be in place before the transit priority corridors are in place. And so this would be more of a temporary relief that can continue over time as well, but would offer some more immediate relief. And of course, the 2 mobility centers and the transit priority corridors, once they're online, you'll have the opportunity to reconfigure, reorganize the network to make the best use of the transit priority corridors and the new mobility centers. And then, of course, you're having the more frequent service, longer hours. Obviously, all of those things work together to better serve downtown. As far as creating the complete network for mobility lanes, helping keep our cyclists and the people on scooters and other things that we don't know about yet that would take advantage of that protected space. We want to be able to focus on the walk and bike plan priorities that we were able to fine tune through this process. And so that'll be what we will be focusing on in the first few years of this as well. Of course, the Parks Department would be continuing to work on their priorities for the greenway system downtown as well. And then the last big move, of course, was maximizing the curb. This has benefits across the board for bringing order to some of the chaos. We would be looking to have more loading zones and better loading zones in locations that are more appropriate or more convenient for the people who need them most. We would have it so that they could be flexible throughout the day and dynamic, so that at the part of the day when loading is most needed, they can be more. And then at the part of the day whenever you need more passenger loading, it can be service for that as well. And the intent would be hoping to keep all of this activity from happening in the middle of traffic, that where so much of it happens today. There's also better order for, or at least some pilot ideas for bringing better order to where the pickups are for the ride share. And so that's where those black dots are that you see on those maps as well. Just the pilot program that we're looking at, whether we end up with the particular company we're working with now or another one, we are going to be pursuing a pilot program for curb enforcement and curb management that could be more digital, that could be more better enforced, and allow those spaces to be used for the proper uses. The loading spaces in particular is what we would be focusing on. And last thing here is just more of a summary of the phasing. Again, I think I've mentioned much of this already, but as a kind of closing remark, and also a reminder to those watching just the process for each of these individual projects, that, you know, it doesn't end today. We're just starting basically today with having these recommendations ready. We'll be going through these various phases over the next several years. And just again to focus on the short term, we really want to hit on the technology. We really want to get the traffic management center working, because we understand that that benefits everything. All of the different modes of travel will benefit from having that. And lastly, as all these pieces come together, East Bank, imagine East Bank, the Edge Hill Community Plan that was recently worked on by the Planning Department. We have several multimodal projects that are going to improve the bike connectivity to downtown, going towards Centennial Park and toward East Nashville and other places as well. As these pieces start coming online, we really start to see a multimodal transportation network serving our downtown that becomes the foundation of a very extended transportation network that we've all been hoping to have. And I think that it is on the horizon, and so that is exciting. And so we do look forward to the next steps. And I'm here to answer any questions that you might have or take any comments.
Great. Thank you, Marty. It's been a long project, and you all have done a great job, so thank you so much for that. Questions, comments? I wish we could just wave a magic wand and have it all happen, but it's not as simple as that. So
one of the things, if I could ask
Sure.
a question. So is the process now, Marty, ultimately to take it to council for approval, or?
That's right. I appreciate you bringing that up. Our next steps, of course, this last couple of months, we've been hitting different commissions and boards, getting people up to speed. And then we will be going to council for the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee on Monday. We'll have a longer presentation than what we provided today to you, because it is set up just for that process. And so if you're interested in learning more or know people who might, you can tune in and watch that at 3:15. It's special time. It's usually 4, but they've given us a little extra time on Monday. And then we'll plan to take a resolution to council at their second meeting in August, which I believe is the 16th, and where they would have a resolution to endorse the plan. So.
great.
The thing I would add, the overall planning effort, I'd like to echo Janet's comments about how thorough and professional, and frankly, it's taken this long because they went to a bunch of people, then went back to a bunch of people, then went back to a bunch of people some more. So the engagement has really been incredible. But if we could realize these projects, they really would be transformational for transit here. So I might suggest the board, similar to what we did when Lucy came and briefed us on the East Bank plan, maybe consider a letter of support to the mayor and council in adopting and ultimately carrying out the plan, if that would be appropriate.
Sounds like a good idea to me. Anybody? Aaron?
Best case scenario for starting the low-hanging fruit of phase one begins when?
Well, I'm happy to be able to say it's already in progress on some of those projects like the Traffic Management Center. And so that we're ready to go. So, and you may be meaning specific to the transit corridors.
Yes.
And I might lean on Steve for that.
Yeah, assuming the council endorses the plan, for instance, West Side Transit Access Transit Priority Corridor, currently we're programmed and funded to initiate the Murfreesboro Pike Corridor Planning Project. And initially we looked at a project boundary at the Sobro Mobility Hub. If assuming the plan is adopted in substantially the same form by council, we could extend that project boundary up to Central via the West Side access and start doing a lot of that technical work, that would need to be done to justify. First of all, justify that process would have to be approved by TDOT and the state, but even into preliminary design for that type of an approach. And the hubs are Sobro, as you're all aware, is basically sited on land currently owned by the convention center that they had always expected to do. So, to Marty's point, if it's adopted, we can initiate conversations with the convention center authority, and start that process up fairly quickly. And East Bank will take a bit because before we can develop the East Bank Mobility Hub, James Robertson Parkway has to be realigned, and that's not an insignificant project or cheap one.
Nope. Other questions, comments?
Marty, I think if Diane's listening, I want her to know you did a good job.
Excellent job, Marty.
I want to thank you for your staff too and the support they've had with this process, because we certainly wouldn't be able to do it without them, and of course your support and what you do every day as well. Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you. And I wanted to comment too about the collaboration, and seeing the collaboration between MTA WeGo and NDOT is just amazing, and it comes out with these kind of projects, and love the fact that you all work so closely together. And I think Marty and Felix, you all just have put together just an amazing project for our city, so thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Marty. Okay. Felix, round two. Felix is the star of the show today. So we have an amendment to the Planning Support Services Task Order that Felix is going to share with us, and this is an action item for the board. So,
Janet, before we go forward, do we need to make a motion for the letter, or is it just, I'd ask maybe Tyler's advice, do we need to make a motion to do a letter in support of this proposal, or is it okay if we just... It was a suggestion.
The suggestion that it be done individually or as a board.
What we did on East Bank was it was one letter signed by all 5 members.
Then I think you probably would want a motion for that.
Okay,
great.
I just want to be clear on that. So if we could have a motion in support of the recommendation.
I will make the motion.
Okay.
Second.
There's a motion, there's a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And thank you, Tyler.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Gail, for that. Okay. Amendment to the Planning Support Services Task Order.
Thank you. So back in November, we asked for your approval of a task order with HDR to help us advance needed work to inform the update to the strategic and service plan. And since then, in mid-February, there was a big announcement by Mayor O'Connell announcing his intent to pursue a referendum for transportation in November of this year. And as you can imagine, there's specific and very detailed documentation that goes along with being able to prepare these to meet the requirements of the Improved Act, which is the state law that allows local governments to pursue a surcharge of certain taxes for dedicated funding for transportation projects. So with that is a heavy lift, and the time is very constrained in terms of being able to put that together. to meet the requirements. So that is going to put us above what the threshold that we had identified for this contract with HDR. And so with that, we're recommending that the board authorize the CEO to execute an increase of $450,000 to the existing task order with HDR for a combined not to exceed amount of $1,390,000. This will not change the project duration, so the project will terminate in December 31st of this year. And the funding for this effort has been previously identified for the long-range plan update in the capital plan.
Great. Thank you, Felix. Questions? Catherine?
Not that I don't appreciate what a significant sum of money $450,000 is, but given that, I mean, from now to November is not a long period of time, and we only meet monthly. And so do we feel comfortable that the $450,000 is the right amount so that we don't get in a pinch between how quickly November is approaching?
So yes, so a lot of the bulk of the work has been constrained within these few months just to make sure that we have the document ready for state review. So the heavy lifting is in the very beginning of the process. So we actually put some cushion there. So the $450,000 accounts are ready for some contingency in case we need additional support past the point where the transportation improvement program document it's finalized. So it's already accounting for some of that.
Great, good question.
Most of the actual work will essentially be complete by early May, but we may need their support, as their communications are going on to answer technical questions that may come up.
Great. Other questions, comments? Ron?
Yeah, if we don't authorize this, what happens next?
That's a good question. Then we can't authorize the work, and we'll have kind of an incomplete plan.
So that just means then the application to apply for the Improve Act funding just won't happen at all, or?
Well, it's not Improve Act funding, it's to get it on the ballot for the voters to decide. I mean, there's a fair amount of material now, but I wouldn't give it, as solid a chance if we have incomplete documentation.
And then one more follow-up question is if, make sure I'm saying this right, does having them, does it change any timeline for what they were doing previously? Like, will they complete what they were going to do previously well before this new task is being put upon them?
There's a substantial amount of work complete to date, but this would be needed to finish that task.
Great.
And again, as Felix alluded to Catherine's question, a little bit of cushion for the unexpected, which we can expect the unexpected.
Which happens. It happens. Any other questions or comments? Okay, if there are none, then the NICE committee will present this as a motion, yes. Correct? To authorize our CEO to execute the $450,000 increase to the existing task order with HDR Engineering. So that is the motion.
So there is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, then I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
There you have it. Planning.
There we go.
And planning. And
All
planning.
right. Steve, proceed ahead quickly. Okay, our last action item is something that's kind of fun, and this is an authorization for a free fair day on Saturday, April 20th, in recognition of the dedication of the Diane Nash Plaza. So,
Presenting
I don't know, is anybody going to talk about this? I can read. Seems like a great idea to me.
Yeah, so I think most folks are aware that that Metro Council did authorize a renaming of the Courthouse Plaza after Diane Nash, who was certainly instrumental in the civil rights movement here in Nashville. And on April 20th, the city will be celebrating that dedication. The organizing committee that's planning the event approached us about the idea of having a free fair day to make that event more accessible to more Nashvillians, to honor Diane and to participate in the events. We did include a copy of their letter with that request to Chair Gail Carr-Williams in your packet. It's certainly a reasonable request, which would be a great community celebration. Frankly, particularly on a Saturday, the revenue loss is pretty nominal.
Right.
So certainly from a staff perspective, we think it's something we would want to support.
Okay, great. Questions or comments?
I think this is a wonderful idea, and I'm proud to support it.
Great. Okay, well, we'll find out if the others are here in a minute.
I think it's a wonderful idea, and I'm appreciative to have received this letter and be able to present it here. I will say this, Nick Oldham is not here today, but when Mayor O'Connell was sworn in, we were on the Diane Nash Plaza, and his son was remarkable, and he explained to us why what plaza we were on, everything Diane Nash had done. And I don't know how it is. He must be 7 or 8, but just
He's 7.
7. He was just brilliant, but it made me so proud to know that our children are learning and understanding the value of what so many of our Nashville warriors have done, and for him to be able to recite it without being asked to recite it and be factually accurate and correct was pretty beautiful. And so I just wanted to give, what's Nick's son's name? Anybody know? If you don't, I want to give Kingston a shout out today and say, Kingston, you are a hero as well. So just want to make certain I just put that there. So
That was fun.
it's our We Go children.
That's right. Okay, well, if there are no other questions or comments, then the NICE committee will recommend that the board authorize the system-wide free fair day on April 20th in recognition of the dedication ceremony for the Diane Nash Plaza.
There is a motion. If there's a second,
Second.
any further conversation or discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I almost thought I was done.
That was good. Okay, good.
Thank you, Ms.
That concludes the New Initiatives and Community Engagement Committee report. I'll hand it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Good report today. And Ms. Dalton, I'll go to you for your committee. Thank you for being flexible today.
Absolutely. At the behest of my chair, how could I refuse? Thank you and welcome to the Operations and Finance Committee. We have an action item today, lots of action going on. We're going to hear from Dan Freudberg on the ADA and On-Demand Access Transportation Services Contract Award, although I don't see him. It's going to be Marilyn Yoakley. My apologies. Thank you, Marilyn.
You're welcome. Dan will be here, but he's at a conference right now, so I'll do the best I can. How's that? Madam Chair and members of the board, thank you for having me today. I want to refer you to pages 15 and 16 of your packet. I'm here today to make a recommendation to the board to award contracts for the ADA and the on-demand choice services with our third-party providers. Just for point of reference, our current contracts with our three third-party providers expire on the 30th of June this year. So these contracts, if approved today, will take effect on July 1. I just want to remind the board that WeGo provides American with Disabilities Act, ADA, paratransit services. And we do that by utilizing a combination of our in-house operators and vans, and we partner with third-party providers. We currently have multiple third-party providers for the ADA service, and this allows us to be able to scale our operations up or down and continue to provide the service that our access customers have come to expect from WeGo. And as a reminder to the new members of the board, access service in Nashville goes well above and beyond what ADA requires. Access service does the entirety of the county from the time our first bus leaves the depot until the time our last bus comes back. And that is provided all days during the week. So that means somebody that may be in an area that doesn't have fixed route and they have a disability, we still provide them service as long as we have buses operating. We also offer what we call our demand response services, and that's a new program that we launched approximately five years ago. These are a user choice program. They include our current Access on Demand, which is available for a same-day service for access eligible customers. We also have our First Mile, Last Mile, or our WeGo Link program, and that's for the general public as well as persons with disabilities. And we are hoping that we are looking in the current or in the new fiscal year to launch a pilot program called Access Flex. So when the committee looked long and hard of the type of services that we provide, we noticed that these are complex. So that's why we decided to issue 2 separate RFPs. This approach allowed us to engage with providers and companies for the choice programs that may not be able to meet all the requirements of the FTA and the ADA. It also provides us the opportunity, and I wish that Walter was here, that to have some smaller companies, some small local companies that may be able, that meet all the ADA requirements, but they don't have the capacity to meet all the demand response. So just to summarize both RFPs, RFP 2023-130 is the ADA service. As a reminder, anybody that made a proposal on that service, they must be able to provide all the same services that we do in-house. Door-to-door, provide assistance. They must follow all the ADA regulations as it pertains to drug and alcohol testing, and those are subject to review on a yearly basis by our safety department. They must provide all their training materials for their operators to WeGo, and so that we know that they all have a level of training in transporting persons with disabilities. And they also had to include their process for onboarding and screening new drivers, including do they do background checks, the driving records, and their experience. For RFP 2023-131, the on-demand services, again, that's not under the guidance of the ADA, and by that I mean it's not mandated by the ADA that we have to provide it, but we do. These are user choice, which means people have the choice to use these or not. We just have the option out there for customers. And because of that, the ADA states drug and alcohol testing is not required for all the providers that do the choice program. Getting into the procurement process, we did not establish a DBE goal. However, 3 of the providers that I will recommend today are locally minority-owned businesses, but not currently certified. If you look at the bottom of page 15, there is a summary there of the criteria that we use to evaluate both RFPs. Overall, we had a great response. We received 12 proposals for RFP ADA and 11 for the demand response. We made a careful review of the initial proposers, and we narrowed it down to the top rank, which can be found at the top of page 16. With the top ranked proposers, we conducted interviews, asked clarification questions, received best and final offers, and the evaluation committee at the end of February finally reached a consensus. We thought long and hard about these contracts. And we informed the providers that I will recommend today of the intent to award. So all that being said, for the ADA access, we we selected American Music City Taxi, which is one of our current providers, Navarre Corporation, which is a national company. They are disabled veteran owned. They provide services to the VA medical centers, including here in Nashville, and they're actually headquartered here. Z-Trip is based out of Kansas City. They started as a taxi company and now have morphed into a specialty transportation for persons with disabilities. They are based in Kansas City, but they have an office here in Nashville, and they operate in 33 cities across the states, including Kansas City, Indianapolis, San Antonio, and Louisville, Kentucky. We also recommend St. George. That's our small, family-owned, 4-vehicle business. And Mobility Solutions was also brought on board. And again, as Mr. Womack said, that's one of our current providers. For the demand response or the user choice programs, we selected American Music City, Uber, Mobility Solutions, and Z-Trip. Uber, we heard very strongly from members of the disability community that was a choice that they wanted to have for the Access on Demand program. So that was why we brought those on. So all that being said, before I get to the recommendations, do you have any questions for me?
Are there any questions for Marilyn?
Can I just ask the 5-year term of the contracts, is that standard for these types of contracts?
We generally do 3 with options year and 4. It's been my past experience that we always extend options year and 4. We do have provisions in the contract that if they do not meet the standards, then we can terminate the contract.
Yeah, our services contracts, usually the typical are 3 plus 1 plus 1. Sometimes it's 5. The selection processes are pretty exhaustive, so we try to, not go through it too often. Marilyn alluded to, we can always terminate a contract. We actually have no cause termination rights in contracts as well. So we'd be monitoring it in that way. But that's pretty common throughout the industry. Especially if you have, as is the case with 1 or 2 of the providers, if you essentially have someone establishing operations, in a new market, they need to have kind of an amortization period to make that work.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, go ahead. You go first.
To piggyback on our question, so is the we know we haven't gotten to the recommendation, but for the contract, is it 5 or is it a 3 plus 1 plus 1?
It's a 5.
Okay.
And
So the DBE goal, I know you put 0% on it. Is that typical that if you believe that you might not find a minority or woman-owned company that you would put 0% even as the goal versus?
What procurement does when they initiate any contract to set the DBE goal, they basically go to the state certified DBE list.
Right.
And those are categorized by industry codes. So in this case, for this type of provider, there were 0 disadvantaged businesses. To Marilyn's point, when we set DBE goals, those are folks who've been through the US DOT certification process. So 3 of these are minority or women owned, but they have not gone through the process. Now, ultimately, if they're awarded the work, it might be worth their while to go through that process, which frankly is very arduous.
Yes, it is. But I just had never really seen us do 0%, even though, but now when I hear the explanation about how you go through the list, that's helpful to understand why we had 0%. I don't like it, but I understand it. So thank you for explaining it to me.
I
Thank
actually
you.
questioned that when we put the RFP out as well.
A lot of the contracts, construction is a great example where there's a ton of certified, DBE contractors on that side, or even on some of our professional services. There are quite a few firms available in the region, but this happens to be one of those that they just aren't out there.
That process is a hard process for small businesses, so thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? Go ahead, Jessica.
I just want to echo what Chair Gale had mentioned about the DVE. I was concerned about that too. I'm glad you brought that up. So thank you for explaining that to us, Marilyn and Steve. Are there any further questions for Marilyn about the ADA on-demand access transportation supplemental services contract award? Nope. Okay. So do you want to read the recommendation?
I can, or you can, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
I can, I'll give the recommendation.
Okay.
So I would recommend the board for RFP 2023-130, ADA access transportation. I recommend, we recommend the board provide the chief executive officer the authority to enter contracts with the following providers for a term of 5 years, not to exceed $40 million total across all providers: American Music City Taxi, Navarre Corporation, Z-Trip, St. George, and Mobility Solutions. For RFP 2023-131, on-demand services, we recommend the board provide the chief executive officer the authority to enter contracts with the following providers for a term of 5 years, not to exceed $25 million across all providers: American Music City, Uber, Z-Trip, and Mobility Solutions. For both RFPs, the not to exceed amounts are higher than anticipated, but this will allow us for the flexibility and to adapt to changes in customer preferences. And we can also look at adopting some innovative solutions. The funding source for this is the WeGo Access operating budget.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. The Operations and Finance Committee makes a motion that we approve the staff recommendations for action item 24004.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. And is there any further discussion?
I just want to note that I'm pleased that Mobility Solutions was included as per Mr. Womack's public comments earlier.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Now we'll just comment in your presentation, you talked about how much the community contributed to your decision making. Any further discussion? With that, I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
You're approved. Thank you. Okay. For you.
Allow me to turn it back over to you, Chair Williams.
Awesome. Thank you, Ms. Doppel. Good report. Mr. Bland.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, members. First of all, I want to remind everyone that this weekend our spring service changes go into effect. So if anybody's watching, if you haven't picked up one of these handy little books that summarize all the changes, please do so. They're pretty comprehensive. Most are centered around restructuring of service in North Nashville to coincide with the opening later this year of the Dr. Ernest Rip Patton Jr. North Nashville Transit Center. They include the startup of our new crosstown Route 71 Trinity, which connects North Nashville to East Nashville along Trinity Lane, extensions of the Route 9 Metro Center and the Route 14 Whites Creek buses to serve the new transit center with improved frequency on both of those routes, rerouting and improved frequency on the 42 St. Cecilia Cumberland route, rerouting and improved frequency on two existing crosstown routes, the 75 Midtown and the 77 Wedgewood Thompson, and also the changes make permanent that you approved, the Route 70 Bellevue connector that we did as a pilot starting in the fall, coinciding with the opening of Lawson High School. It's a pretty large change. I think it portends what we may see in other parts of town as we open up new neighborhood transit centers. We'll be operating the services from temporary stops until the transit center is open later this spring. So I would frankly anticipate we'll have some hiccups, particularly in the first couple weeks and folks getting used to new patterns of travel. But I have to say one of the changes, we'll be upgrading the frequency on the 22 Bordeaux to every 10 minutes. And I think that's pretty phenomenal service for our community. So we're really looking forward to that. We're still in the process of accepting new bus deliveries. We're still in the process of onboarding new operators. So we will be stretched pretty thin for the first month or two until we start seeing more of those folks and more of that equipment hit the road. So I would ask folks to be a little bit patient with us as we work through some of the kinks and improve the product over the course of the next few months. On March 1st, we formally revised our bicycle policy to allow e-bikes on our bike racks, subject to the conditions of that new policy. So far, what I hear from folks like Andy and Nick is we really haven't had any significant issues with that policy, so we're happy to be able to extend that to that community. This past month, CFO Ed Oliphant, who's enjoying a well-earned vacation before his really long-term well-earned vacation, met with Metro Finance and representatives of the mayor's office to review our operating budget proposal for FY25. As usual, Ed was flawlessly prepared, and the proposal was well received. That's not to say we're going to get everything we asked for, but certainly they thought the presentation was comprehensive. With the announcement by Mayor O'Connell of his intention to pursue a transportation funding initiative on the November ballot, quite a few of our staff have been heavily involved, as well as folks from Metro Planning, the mayor's office, and NDOT on working to assemble the package that he would be able to release to the voters. That work has included working with two advisory committees, a technical advisory committee that was appointed, as well as a community advisory committee that was appointed. And the action that you took earlier today for us to be able to add on to our contract with HDR will allow us to complete that work in a timely fashion for the mayor to be able to submit it to council for consideration. We have work continuing on three other significant planning efforts. First of all, Stantec we have on board. They've spent the last few months collecting data to support our zero-emission fleet transition plan. This past month, they conducted a staff workshop on a number of the issues to try to establish some guiding principles. And we expect that probably in the next couple months, we'll have Stantec in to do some workshopping with you all as well in one of our regular board meetings. Several months ago, you approved a contract with Marine Tiger to support our planning for our system security assessment and plan, and they've been hard at it on site and already coming up with some strong recommendations. I want to particularly and publicly thank Chief Drake and the Metro Nashville Police Department, who've been extremely supportive and cooperative in this process. Marine Tigers met with quite a few of their folks and really done some deep diving into some of the data that MNPD collects. And then finally, we've received proposals for the next update to our comprehensive service development plan. That was the old in-motion plan. It's aged pretty well, but the operative word is it has aged, and it is due to be updated. So we are currently, this is again another partnership project between MTA, RTA, NDOT, and Metro Planning. So in addition to it being our service, comprehensive service development plan, Metro will be doing things like updating the major and collector street plan off of the work that's conducted. So in all likelihood, we expect to come back probably at the May meeting, I would think, for a recommended contract award. Other activities, I got to participate with Jessica and Kendra Apwitz from the mayor's office on a transit and mobility panel for Leadership Nashville's Quality of Life Day. And I'm always blown away by Jessica's knowledge and her passion. And we got a lot of good questions, a lot of good discussion at that event. We also were able to facilitate a meeting this month between members of the East Bank Development Team, the folks at Metro who are working on the overall East Bank development, including the infrastructure, with our friends at Federal Transit Administration, and particularly in the environmental planning section. We don't anticipate initiating FTA-funded projects there for a few years yet, but some of the decisions Metro is making now on early land acquisition, some of the environmental process will certainly have a bearing on those projects down the road. So we thought it'd be a good idea to have FTA updated on what Metro is doing in terms of environmental review. And I know the feedback we got from FTA was that they appreciated being brought into the process early, and it should make, ultimately when we do go after project, it should make that process much simpler. We had an initial meeting this past week with leadership from the Tennessee Titans to talk about transit options as we roll into, certainly when the new stadium opens and the expanded number of events they expect to have there, but even in the interim as they're reducing quite a bit of the parking capacity during construction, things that we might do to support greater use of transit to Nissan Stadium events. Last weekend, I got to participate in my fifth of 7 Leadership Tennessee sessions. This one was in Knoxville. Really kind of blown away by the quality of the leadership in that class and the overall program, and still can't figure out how the heck I got selected. So. And then finally, always like to update you on the RTA side. We're continuing to advance land acquisition for our Murfreesboro Park and Ride, slowly but steadily. We do expect imminent action by one of the property owners to approve the sale of the land to us, and then we can initiate design. We've also been approached by another adjacent landowner about a potential sale. So that project's moving along. It'll be a little bit slower because it's adjacent to the city's new transit facility that's under construction, and the city's contractors are actually using it as a staging and laydown area. So they should time out pretty nicely. Hatch Consulting Group continues to advance the WeGo Star Future Vision study. After their review of preliminary findings with the RTA board, they were given the go-ahead to model some of the preferred scenarios. So they're actually now working with R.J. Corman, the railroad operator, to do that detailed modeling to come back with final recommendations. We're continuing to work with the development team of H.G. Hill and Southeast Ventures on a joint development project at Donaldson Station. And over the past month, I want to give a lot of credit to Lydia Benda and the folks who work with her on our design team. We think we've come up with a pretty nice solution to integrate the development, accommodate the existing train station function, and also have an expanded neighborhood transit center associated in Donaldson, along with some intersection improvements that we're talking to NDOT about. In all likelihood, it will require a replatting of the land in that area. So we're talking to our attorneys and appraisers and surveyors, about that effort. And then finally, and maybe most significantly, it probably didn't take them a whole lot of time, Governor Lee did sign the legislation that the General Assembly passed, extending the RTA through June 30th, 2032. So please thank your husband for voting in favor. We do appreciate that. So unless there are any questions, Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Steve. As always, what a wonderful report. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Bland? I don't have much in my report, but first of all, I do want to congratulate all the collaboration that's going on between MTA WeGo and other entities here in Nashville, because I think that's what's going to make the difference as we go further. And I know everyone's getting ready for all the work that has to be done for purpose of the referendum vote, and want you to know that I think with us allowing for more planning, that gives you more flexibility and hopefully more help along the way. So grateful that we can be a leader in this. And to that, I know we talked about last month about the board getting together to talk about the referendum, learning more about it, and learning what our governance role is in it. And I think we are seeking to have that at the end of this month, end of April. There'll be more information available for us to work with at the end of the month. And so everybody keep your calendars open for that opportunity for us to get together. And just to everybody, thanks for all the hard work you do. And I am really excited that we're having a free, fair day in honor of Diane Nash. That's one of those things that just really warm everyone's heart and reminds us the purpose of transit here and transit equity here in Nashville. So with that being said, if anyone does, I don't know if anyone has any questions for me.
Can I say one thing?
Sure.
For the record, could we try to make sure that Kingston and his knowledge of Diane Nash, actually his name makes it into the minutes of the meeting? Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Yes, he's an amazing young fella. With that, Kingston's in the minutes, right? Yeah, Kingston. Yes. 4 times, yeah.
4 now.
Kingston can come in here and teach us a little something, so that would be great. If there's no more questions, no further comments, then I will move for adjournment. We are adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.